Have you ever heard somebody say, Christianity is not a religion, it's a relationship? I've heard that plenty of times. It's almost like you're saying that it is one or the other. Is Christianity not a religion? Is it only a relationship? We're going to talk about that a little bit more on this episode.
I mean, if religion is so great, why has it started so many wars? Why does it build huge churches but fails to feed the poor? Tell single moms God doesn't love them if they've ever had a divorce, but in the Old Testament, God actually calls religious people whores. One thing is vital to mention, how Jesus and religion are on opposite spectrums. See, one's the work of God, but one's a man-made invention. See, one is the cure, but the other's the infection. See, because religion says do, Jesus says done. And that's why religion and Jesus are two different clans. Religion is man searching for God. Christianity is God searching for man. So for religion, no, I hate it. In fact, I literally resent it. Because when Jesus said, "It is finished," I believe he meant it.
That was a few clips pulled together from a guy by the name of Jefferson Bethke. About 6 years ago, he was a youth worker, pretty well known in the Seattle area. And he put this video up on YouTube called Why I Hate Religion But Love Jesus. And about 6 years ago, it took the internet by storm. So much so that by the next day, there were millions of views. And it got him a book deal. Now, I love Jefferson Bethke. I've seen a lot of his question and answer videos and have read his books. And I think that for the most part, his theology is solid. But what I started to notice after watching this video was how there was this dichotomy that is in people's minds that Christianity is either a religion or it's a relationship. What do you think of when you think about religion? I think different things come to different people's minds based on how they were raised and their environment and who raised them and where they were raised. When I think about religion, I think about my upbringing. You see, we wouldn't consider ourselves necessarily a religion. Actually, we were quite focused on saying, no, our faith is about our relationship with God. And when we thought about religion, we thought about all the other belief systems out there except for ours. However, our belief system was very rigid. It was very works-based. It was very earning-based. It lacked this concept of grace. And the way in which I was raised encompasses only about 2% of American Christianity as we know it, but it was a very rigid and conservative 2%, kind of the minority of what you would see in evangelicalism or fundamentalism today. And when I say that it was very works-focused and very earning-focused, that wasn't necessarily how we represented or put forward the gospel or good news of Jesus as it pertains to this idea of salvation or going to heaven when you die. You see, we believe that Jesus, and we would say that Jesus took on our sin in the substitutionary way so that we can't earn our way to heaven. However, for those of us who had already made that decision to accept that gift of salvation that we called it, we would still believe that there was this separation and this tension between us and this angry God that was always frustrated at us for messing up, even though we had so-called this gift of salvation, or we were one day going to be in heaven with God when we died. Webster's dictionary defines the word dichotomy as this: it is a noun, a division or contrast between two things that are or are represented as being opposed or entirely different. So is Christianity a relationship or a religion? I think that maybe we need to define what religion is. If we're going to say that Christianity is either a personal relationship or it's a religion and set up this dichotomy, we need to define what religion is. Webster's dictionary defines religion as the service and worship of God or the supernatural, commitment or devotion to a religious faith or an observance. Says that it is a personal set or an institutionalized system of religious attitudes, beliefs, or practices. You see, if we are going to say that Christianity is a personal relationship and not a religion, we have to throw out the things that Webster says is the definition of religion. I believe that our modern Christianity oftentimes attempts to do this. If we are going to say that Christianity is a personal relationship and not a religion, we have to throw out our church systems, our worship practice, and our belief systems in order to come to this conclusion.
Well, the world of evangelical Christianity was rocked, or perhaps better, shocked recently with the announcement that Hank Hanegraaff, host of the Bible Answer Man radio broadcast and president of the Christian Research Institute, converted to Eastern Orthodoxy. Now, Hanegraaff's move from Protestantism to Eastern Orthodoxy has gotten some pretty mixed reviews. For the most part, it's just treated as a newsworthy item, but some bloggers have expressed their concern that Hanegraaff is turning away from evangelical biblical theology. In fact, rather extreme bloggers gone so far as to accuse Hanegraaff of actually leaving the Christian faith.
If you are unfamiliar with what the Eastern Orthodox Church is, it has its roots all the way back to 1054 AD. You see, up until 1054 AD, there was only one church, one denomination, a unified, universal church called the Catholic Church. And up until about 400 AD, the way in which the church practiced their faith, taught each other truth, and met together was by the reciting of creeds, the singing of songs, and other readings. There were also other practices such as baptism and communion when they gathered. Now, up until 400 AD, there was not a Bible compiled like we have it today, and the Bible was not offered to the common man until about 1500 years after Jesus. And so the way in which the early Christian church practiced their faith was also under the same idea as the Jewish people in the Bible, and that was that faith was best practiced as a community. You see, these worship practices and these institutional ways of doing faith, by Webster's definition, are religion. And the thing with Hank Hanegraaff, the Bible Answer Man, going from modern evangelicalism, which is the dominant denomination and way of Christianity in America, to Eastern Orthodoxy, is that he is leaving something that does not have a full rooting in the historical Christian religious faith for a movement that has its roots all the way back not just to 1054, but over the last 2,000 years of wrestling with doctrine, of meeting together as a community to worship together. And you see, to many of us in the evangelical church, this movement feels that he is moving to something that feels more Catholic. It feels like he is moving to something that feels more mundane, traditional, high church, ritualistic, and in our definition, negative definition, it feels that he is moving towards something that is religious. To say that Christianity is either a relationship or a religion is to not only set up a dichotomy, but to set up what I believe is a false dichotomy. You see, according to Webster's definition, Christianity as a whole, every denomination, every spectrum, is a religion. Now, we just need to ask ourselves, is the religion as Christians, is the religion that we are practicing good religion or bad religion? Let's first take a look at bad religion.
Be careful not to do your acts of righteousness before men, to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets to be honored by men. I tell you the truth, they have received their reward in full.
Matthew 23. Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, "The teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So you must obey them and do everything they tell you. But do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. They tie up heavy loads and put them on men's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to lift a finger to move them. Everything they do is done for men to see. They make their phylacteries wide and the tassels on their garments long. They love the place of honor at banquets and the most important seats in the synagogue. They love to be greeted in the marketplaces and to have men call them Rabbi. But you are not to be called Rabbi, for you have only one master, and you are all brothers. And do not call anyone on earth Father, for you have one Father, and he is in heaven. Nor are you to be called Teacher, for you have one Teacher, the Christ. The greatest among you will be your servant. For whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You shut the kingdom of heaven in men's faces. You yourselves do not enter, nor will you let those enter who are trying to. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You travel over land and sea to win a single convert, and when he becomes one, you make him twice as much a son of hell as you are.
Oftentimes I hear verses like this and others, especially in Matthew, taught as if Jesus is going after religion and religious leaders as a whole. But here's the deal. Jesus is a religious leader. You know, Jesus is one of 5 known rabbis at that time. The role of a rabbi in a Jewish community was to interpret the Mosaic law. This was to interpret what God had commanded and the way in which God expected people of the Jewish faith to live. Jesus wasn't going after religion or religious leaders. He was going after bad religion and bad religious leaders. But here's the deal. We can understand good religion and proper religion and what a good religious leader looks like when we look at Jesus.
Matthew 11. All things have been committed to me by my Father. No one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and those to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find a rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light.
Good religion brings hope to the world. Good religion offers freedom and hope. Bad religion brings bondage. Bad religion weighs you down. Jesus' way, it says here in Matthew 11 that his way is light. It brings rest. See, that is good religion. I'm shocked by how many evangelical churches that tend to simplify a historic, ancient faith and religion, teach a lot of behavior changing and a lot of behavior driven sermons. See, instead of it being something that's light, instead of something that brings rest, we tend to add and pile on do's and shoulds and behavior changes that are almost impossible outside of the gospel and the way of Jesus first. Oftentimes in our attempt to push away from religion, we bring on the heart of religion, which is attempting to change your own life in a way that just weighs you down. Author and pastor Brian Zahnd says this about religion. He says, religion as meritocracy or earning is bad and we need to be saved from it. Religion as the healthy practices of spiritual formation is what we need to embrace. Meet my friend Glenn Packiam. Glenn Packiam holds a doctorate from Durham. He has been a pastor at a mega church of 14,000 people and still is, while also being an Anglican priest.
There's a question that's haunted me over the last couple of years, and the question is this: what if the way we worship is not just an expression of our faith, but is part of what shapes our faith? The church has actually believed this about worship and prayer for centuries. They've known that the way we worship becomes the way that we believe, which in turn becomes the way that we live. So I've been taking a long, hard look at the way that I've been contributing to corporate worship, wanting to see if our songs and our stories are really speaking of Jesus and the gospel and salvation in as clear of a way as they could. And what I've learned about the old historic liturgies of the church is that they were all sort of put together in a way that told a story. They moved in a progression all the way leading up to Christ and the Eucharist. They retell the story of our salvation.
I don't know about you, but the way in which I grew up, where faith and following Jesus was really a personal relationship, but wasn't a religion, made me feel lonely. It didn't root me into anything historical or anything that was beyond myself and anything that had gone before me. Maybe you're there and you're feeling that. I oftentimes talk about the current state of our Christian faith as being that Christianity as a whole religion, as a whole faith system, is like a water park. You have a wave pool and slides and a deep end, and everybody is hanging out at the kiddie pool. Maybe you feel that and you experience that. Let me leave you with this thought from Brian Zahnd. He's an author and a pastor, and he wrote a book called Water to Wine, where he talks about him needing to seek after a faith and a Christianity that's deeper than what he was experiencing. Here's what he says. You might say it was a theological crisis, though that makes it sound too cerebral. The unease I felt came from a deeper place than a mental file labeled theology. I was wrestling with the uneasy feeling that the faith I had built my life around was somehow deficient. Not wrong, but lacking. It seemed watery weak. In my most honest moments, I couldn't help but notice that faith I knew seemed to lack the kind of robust authenticity that made Jesus so fascinating, and I was always utterly fascinated by Jesus. What I knew was that the Jesus I believed in warranted a better Christianity than what I was familiar with. I was in Cana and the wine had run out. I needed Jesus to perform a miracle. Maybe you're feeling that way. Maybe you're feeling that the Christianity that you are experiencing, maybe that is around you, and maybe that you are seeking after needs to be deeper. One way in which you could enter in and find resources and more of this conversation is by going to www.idoubt.online. You can bring your questions, you could bring your comments, and you can bring your curiosity to that website. That website will be in the notes. Hey, thanks so much for listening to this episode. Hopefully we have more coming your way soon.
The podcast you just heard was recorded with Anchor. If you want to make your own, download the Android or iOS app completely free from anchor.fm/podcast. That's anchor.fm/podcast.